Good morning. It is December. Yay. All right. So you know how to do this.
Yes.
Reduce 14 over 18. What can you do?
Divide by 2.
Okay. So you can divide both of these numbers by 2, and that's what we do when we have numbers. But I want to talk about it in a slightly different way. Today, we want to talk about what common factors they have. So today, the rule of thumb is factor first. And it applies the same way when we're working just with plain old numbers. But of course, everything we do has x's and whatnot in it. So I want to think about the factors of 14. What times what is 14?
7 2.
7 times 2. And what about 18? What times what is 18? 9 times 2. And so what I've done is I've written these in factor form. And once you see them written in factored form, then you notice they have a common factor of 2, top and bottom. And that's the reason we can divide top and bottom by 2. 2 goes into 2 one time. And it reduces, and you're left with 7/9. We're doing the same thing today. The rule of thumb is factor first. And in fact, this is what we're going to be doing all week. Factor first. Factor, factor, factor. Everything is factor. Okay. So here we go. Example 1. Simplify the expression. Simplify the expression. What x is not allowed? What is x not allowed to be? Kind of a weird statement, but I'm going to talk about that in just a second. What is x not allowed to be?
0.
That was right. Oh, almost. Oh, almost that was right. We'll talk about that in just a second. Simplify the expression. Simplify the expression. Factor first, ladies and gentlemen. That is the phrase of the week. Factor first. Simplify the expression. So we have x squared plus 5x over 5x plus 25. X squared plus 5x over 5x plus 25. So this is our little rational expression. Rational fractional, it's a fraction. And we want to look at what we can factor. So when you look just at the numerator, what can we do? What do you notice about those two terms in the numerator?
Define.
X. They both have an x, a greatest common factor. So if we can take out that x, that is one of the ways we can factor. If you take out an x from both of those terms in the numerator, what's left behind? X plus 5. Good. And again, you can always double check just by distributing if you needed to. X times x gives you x squared. X times 5 is 5x. So you know you did it right. What about the denominator? What do you notice about the denominator? 5. There's another greatest common factor of 5. So you can take out the 5. And if you take out the 5 from the denominator, what's left behind? X plus 5. And again, you can check by distributing. Now, these are in factored form. And before I go any further, I want to talk about what is x not allowed to be. What is x not allowed to be? Always comes from the denominator. There's x right there. We are not allowed to divide by a 0. What number could you plug in that would make that 0? -5. X cannot equal -5. Write that down. We're going to talk about that next semester when we get back. If you were to take -5 and plug that into the denominator, you'd have 5 times -5 plus 5. -5 plus 5 is 0. And what's 5 times 0? 0. And we would have a 0 in that denominator. And we're not allowed to divide by 0. It's a big fat error. Okay? So if we were to plug in -5, that would be an undefined fraction, which is not allowed. So that's something we want to pay attention to because that's going to come up later. Once we're factored, we can look for common factors, top and bottom. What do you see that they have in common? Yeah, there's an x plus 5 on top, and there's an x plus 5 on bottom. And I love doing this today. This whole week, ladies and gentlemen, you just get to factor and cross stuff off, which is kind of nice. You cannot cross things off before you factor. Once things are factored, written as a product, then x plus 5 goes into x plus 5 one time. Just like 2 divided into 2. Divides into itself one time. And we're left with x over 5. And this is our simplified expression. We also want to keep in mind that x is not allowed to be -5. From that little bubble right there, that would make that denominator 0. Let's look at b. X minus 6 over 2x minus 12. Another rational fractional expression. And I want to think about trying to factor. Can we factor the numerator? Is there a GCF? No. This is x to the first. And if there isn't a greatest common factor, I can't really do anything. So it's its own little factor already. It's prime. It doesn't factor anymore. It's a prime factor. But what about the denominator? What can we do with this 2x minus 12? Divide by 2. There's a greatest common factor here. We're going to take out the 2. If I take out the 2, what's left behind? X minus 6. Very good. So right now at this point, I want to say, hey, what's x not allowed to be? Positive 6. Very good. X can't equal 6. Because if you plug in a 6, 6 minus 6 would be 0, and that would be undefined in the denominator. So that's part of what we call domain. But now we have a common factor on top and bottom. How many times does x minus 6 go into x minus 6? One time. And so what are we left with? 1 on the numerator and a 2 in the denominator. But also x is not allowed to be 6. So today is all about factor, and cross stuff off. It's kind of fun. You can only cross off if it's top and bottom, because we are dividing into itself. Okay, any questions so far? Couple more? Letter C, x squared minus 4x minus 12 over x squared minus 4. Do you think we can just cross off the x squareds on top and bottom? Negatory, rubber duck. You cannot do it. Don't even try. You must factor first. Okay? You must write things in bubbles before you can pop them. They have to be in bubble form. So we're going to look at that numerator. It's a trinomial, so we're going to try to double bubble. What times what is x squared? X times x. What times what is negative 12?
Negative 4, plus 3, negative 4, plus 3.
Negative 4 plus 3 is true. What else is negative 12?
Plus 4 times.
Negative 6 and positive 2. Negative 6 and positive 2. That's the winner right there. Negative 6 and positive 2. All right, what about the denominator? Can we factor x squared minus 4? Yes, you can. It double bubbles as well. X times x is x squared. What times what is negative 4? Negative 2 and positive 2. Yes. So we are practicing our factoring. Before I go any further, once I have all these written in bubbles, what is x not allowed to be here? If you plug in a -2 right there, that would make that bubble a 0. What about over here? What can you plug in there? +2. Yeah, x cannot be negative or +2. Each bubble we get one of those numbers x is not allowed to be. All right, now once it's factored, what can we reduce? Yeah, x plus 2 goes into x plus 2 one time. So those go away, and we're left with an x minus 6 in the numerator, x minus 2 in the denominator. Can I cross out the x's? No, you cannot. Don't do it. You can only cross out bubbles, okay? Only bubbles reduce. Be very, very careful. I like to talk about it in terms of strong bonds and weak bonds. You can't break addition and subtraction. They're strong bonds. They make everything harder, okay? But when we have things multiplied together, that's when they're weak bonds. They can be broken, okay? So when things are written as a product, which is what we have here, a bubble times a bubble, then those things can reduce, okay? But also remember, x is not allowed to be positive or -2. Really important to think about what x is not allowed to be. Always comes from the denominator. Let's look at letter D. Y squared minus 7y over y squared minus 8y plus 7. Can we cross out the y squareds? No. What do you need to do? Factor first. All right, factoring first. What can we do with our numerator? GCF, greatest common factor. Very good. What do they have in common? A y. Good. What's left behind when you take out the y? Y minus 7. Very good. And then what can we do with the denominator? Double bubble. Very good. What times what is y squared? Y times y. What times what is positive 7? -7 and -1. Very good. -7 and a -1 give me that positive 7. You can check the rainbow if you need to. Right here, what are that y values not allowed to be? 7 and 1. Very good. And right there, just 7 minus 7 would give you a 0, and 1 minus 1 would give you a 0. So we don't want to use those numbers. Can't have zeros in denominators. What reduces? Yeah, y minus 7 goes into y minus 7 one time, and so what's left behind? Y over y minus 1. Very good. And also, y cannot equal 1 or 7. All right, questions so far? This is pretty easy, right? This is a nice way to end the semester. It's kind of. I do have 2 more. Seems like a lot, but believe me, it's a good thing. These look more complicated, but yeah. These are the last ones. 2x cubed minus 32x, all divided by x cubed plus 8x squared plus 16x. Can I cross off the x cubed here? No, never. What do you need to do? Factor first. All right, I'm going to ask that every single time. But guess what? Everyone will still come test it. Cross crap off. You can't do it. Don't do it. Okay. Looking at the numerator, what can we do in the numerator? What can we do first? GCF. What is the GCF? 2x. 2x. Very good. We can take out a 2x. If we take out a 2x, what's left behind? X squared minus 16. Very good. Again, you can double check if you need to by distributing, because that's all we're doing, undistributing. 2x times x squared gives me 2x cubed. And 2x times negative 16 gives us that negative 32x. What about the denominator? What can we do in the denominator? Another GCF. What do they have in common? They all have an x, so we are going to take out an x. When we take out the x, what's left behind? X squared plus 8x plus 16. Very good. Can I factor some more? Yes, we need to factor further. These are still x's being squared, and so we can probably still double bubble those. So this one just has an extra step. How does x squared minus 16 factor? What times what is x squared? X times x. And what times what is negative 16? Negative 4 and positive 4. In my denominator, again, we have this trinomial, so we're going to try to factor that as well. We have an x out in front, and I'm going to try and factor x squared plus 8x plus 16. What times what is x squared? X times x. And what times what is positive 16? Positive 4 times positive 4 gives us that positive 16. And remember, you can check the rainbow. Right at this step, what is x not allowed to be? Negative 4. What else? What can I plug in there? 0. Yeah, if you plug in a 0, that's going to make the entire denominator multiply by 0, so the whole thing would be 0. Good. All right, what cancels out here? X plus 4 goes into x plus 4. What time? One time. What else cancels out? The x's cancel out. Yeah, this is 2 times x times this whole thing. These x's are being multiplied, so they can reduce as well. X goes into x one time. And so in the numerator, I'm left with 2 times 1 is 2 times x minus 4 over x plus 4. And of course, x is not allowed to be negative 4 or 0. All right, last one. Two x squared plus 9x minus 35 over x cubed plus 7x. Sorry, 7x squared. So we need to factor. What can we do in the numerator? Is there a GCF? There is no GCF. So I think we're left with try to double bubble. What times what is 2x squared? 2x times x. And last times last has to be negative 35. What times what is negative 35? Negative 5 and 7. So I'm going to put my 7 here and my negative 5 on the inside. How do you know if you did it right? Rainbow. You must check the rainbow here. So when I check the rainbow, 2x times 7 is 14x. And negative 5 times x is negative 5x. And what do we get when we combine those? 9. 14 minus 5 is that 9, that 9x in the middle term. So we did it right. What can we do with our denominator? There is a GCF. What's the GCF? X squared. They both have an x squared that can come out. What's left behind? X plus 7. Very good. So right here, once you're in bubble form, once you've got all your bubbles, it's easiest to say, hey, what is x not allowed to be? -7 or 0. Yes, very good. We got that solitary x out there. If you make it a 0, then the whole denominator is 0. Good. So what crosses out? X plus 7 goes into x plus 7 one time. And we're left with a numerator of, 2x minus 5 over x squared. And x is not allowed to be -7 or 0. Okay, factor, ladies and gentlemen. That is what you're doing.